All right. Good evening, everyone. Just giving people a little chance to get populated. How y'all doing this evening? On what we call this 4th of July Eve, the 3rd of July. This is BroDiallo, still broadcasting out of the city of Chirac, state of Illinois, United States of America, on the over-ravaged planet Earth in the misnamed Milky Way galaxy. I'm very happy to be here. I know this is a little impromptu, but I've been MIA as far as the BroDiallo broadcast. I apologize for that. I think I'll have to work on giving better notice, or not. Ain't nobody paying no attention to me anyway. But let me not be down and complain. I really appreciate you spending this evening with me as we discuss I won't be long, but I must be strong, in the words of the late, great Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. It's a lot going on. Every time I go on air, I got back from Atlanta. I've been doing some traveling, seeing some of my people. I was just in Brooklyn, Atlanta. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be in Kansas City. I was in Atlanta with the Earn Your Liberation crew. I'll be in Kansas City with Skip Coon, which is my partner, my brother on the Rational Radical broadcast, both on Black Power Media. Shout out to Black Power Media. Very happy to be there. So, it's been a busy summer. Then I got back here and Chicago was on fire. It's like every time I step away, shit get crazy. So, I guess I'll just should stay here, right here at this desk. Keep hold shit down. But anyway, I'm glad you're here with me. I just got a few words I want to share on affirmative action and its repeal. Before I get into that, man, while I was in Atlanta, I go on, I log on and pretend like I'm gonna do some work. Every time I sit down to write, research, and do anything constructive at a computer, I get to browsing various sites, looking at various viral memes and shit. instead of working, but I always keep a window open just in case my wife came into the hotel room so I can pretend like I'm working. But I saw that video of that black male, can't even call him a man, black male assaulting a black woman, and a 14-year-old son, her 14-year-old son came to her defense, and what I would probably uh, say, understandably, I can't say the word justified. I cannot say that shooting was justified because the circumstances are whack as fuck. But I would say that young man understandably took the necessary steps to defend his mother's life, to protect his life as well, by killing that dude. And as tragic as that situation is, what disturbed me more than anything was the community's response. It reminds me of Muda Baruka. Muda Baruka has this famous poem or song where he says, "It's not good to stay in a white man country too long. It's not good to stay in a white man country too long," because I see a lot, it's not, in so many ways, so much deeper than just speaking English or having a US citizenship or worshiping Christ, accepting Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, or trying to achieve or sustain ourselves under capitalism. In a much deeper sense, our fundamental mentality, or what Dr. Marimba Aini would call our asili, our fundamental personality, our fundamental mentality, our fundamental, not just perception of reality, but how we relate to or place ourselves in reality, has been so deeply warped. So deeply warped, as how when we see things, where we see facts on the ground. And that's another thing, with statistics, data, facts, evidence. One thing is to have the truth before you. It's a whole nother thing how you consume, digest, and re-articulate or relate to that truth. Meaning that when you see something good, like one person has facts, the next person has facts. One person can interpret and say that is a good thing. Another person say that is a bad thing. And so, as a father of a 14-year-old here in Chicago, I have a 14-year-old son here in Chicago, the exact same age as that young man, looked just a lot like that young man, tall, slender, hair all over his hair, weird hairstyle. Many of the, a pretty calm demeanor. I really saw my son. I don't want to sit here like Obama's whack ass, "If I had a son," what he said with Trayvon, that whack ass shit. But I really, resonated with that because, my son, navigates these streets every day and engages with the menticide, the oppression, the maladaptation and dysfunction that is saturating Chicago Black community every day. He goes to a school that is more than 98% Black. He lives in a community that's gentrifying, but is still, upwards of, I think last I looked, 87% Black. He has us, me and his mother, as parents. So he lives in a Black community for all the benefits and all the rewards and all the fortunate aspects of being Black and living within one of the few remaining Black communities, historically and contemporarily Black. It also comes with risks that we're all aware of. And some of those risks are well inflated when it comes to Chicago. I understand that as well. But what really disturbed me is that if my community can look at a tragedy and see triumph, that's highly disturbing. Or in the world of Dale Jones, I'm gonna try to get through one show without quoting Dale Jones. Rest in peace. We lose so much we don't know what a victory looks like. And all I could think about, all these people praising this young man, I have to think of myself as a person who's worked with teens in Chicago, by and large, from the moment I moved here up until, I say really until my last formal gig working with Chicago teens is when I was running or co-running the Green Teens program here on the South Side of Chicago. As someone who works with teens, there was a study a few years ago that saying that many Black youth that dwell in poor Black communities have a lot of physiological and psychological conditions or afflictions that are akin to Iraqi war veterans, from PTSD to neurological to high rates of stress hormones, to the point where you can get, when you're in a constant state of stress, your adrenal glands, your stress hormones can start be overproduced to the point where your adrenal functions start to shut down. You become psychologically numb. So the trauma of just being in a space of high tension doesn't even compare to the trauma of having to commit an act. And I also, a few years back, I was working with a former child soldier from Sierra Leone, and he was on his speaking tour and a book tour, and I was talking to him. I had several really long conversations in person and over the phone, where he was talking to me about himself as a child soldier and his peers. And for the last half century, the Black community, we as a community have kind of concluded that child soldiering is a bad thing. But just as of recently, because Black people have fully embraced this death cult called Western culture, this death cult called Christianity, this death cult called Islam, this death cult called capitalism, this death cult called individualism. Since we are so long indoctrinated and infused in this society, it's not good to stay in a white man country too long. Something we understood as a community that was often a tragedy, now we see it as a triumph. Just before this 14-year-old child had to take the life of this man in defense of his mother, Lord Jamar, whom I follow because I'm a fan. And I know he said he'll live long because he gives strong blows in the heads of my flows, dread flows. I've been with Brand Nubian since the Feel So Good single, since All for One. And when Grand Puba left, I stuck with him. In God We Trust, I'm an atheist. And in God We Trust is one of my favorite albums. Black and Blue, Past the Gat. Anyway, he was out there advocating for arming Black children. He was advocating for arming Black children. I remember as a student in the 90s, I was part of actions and organizing and advocacy and protest to disarm children, to exempt children from combat, to remove arms. I was a former member of the Stop the Violence Coalition. I was working with Kennecook and Kids Across America and taking children who have been subjected to violence, exposed to violence, or engaged in violence to summer camps to get them away out into the country, having them cultivate crops and nurture and cultivate animals to heal them. And it was very understood that exposure to violence at any age was a bad thing. But to imprint violence and death on children was extremely damaging and stayed with them their whole lives. I know adults personally. I've worked in trauma centers where I've been face to face with people immediately in the midst of a violent event, stabbings, shootings, brutal beatings. I've worked in level 1 trauma centers. I've worked in juvenile prisons. They call it gladiator schools, in public and private prisons, in the infirmary, front line, shit. So as someone who's been subjected to violence, exposed to violence, I'm very proud to say I've never pointed a gun at another person. I don't threaten people. I don't threaten people with violence. I advocate for self-defense. That's why I say that it's not a good thing at all that boy had to do that. It's unfortunate. I think what happened to that young man and that woman was unfortunate. And what that young man did was necessary, but it was not good. And I keep thinking that everybody that's online singing these praises, acting like this was a triumphant moment, when this young man needs counsel. And if he goes into, is dealing with some type of traumatic, psychological, psycho-emotional tragedy as he proceeds, are y'all going to be there? This will be the same young man who will be a legal adult in 4 years. And if he doesn't get the help to process what he's been through, when he's walking down the street, the same people online singing his praises will cross the street to avoid him. We got soldiers who were trained to kill, who've gone through conditioning to take people's lives, that come back and can't process and cope with it. So all I can say is I hope this young man is getting trauma counseling. I hope that from an African-centered perspective, because a lot of times if you take them to standard counseling, they pathologize. We should assume he's traumatized. We should assume it. Yes, we should assume. We should work from that thing and work our way backwards. It should be evaluated whether or not he's traumatized. And if so, he should get the help. But yeah, why wouldn't you assume that? Yes, I think you should take precaution. Yes, we should assume he's traumatized. Just like if your child has any, you should assume that he's going to be, that's what inoculation is all about. Like, that's about, he's all right. I mean, we still on that shit. You all right. You tough. Here's a lollipop. And go. Of course, if he fell and cut himself, you should assume that the wound could be infected. You cleanse the wound. My son was out on his skateboard the other day and fell, wiped out on his skateboard, came home with abrasions, and I assumed that they would be infected. Now I could have just left the wound. Well, his mother, let me not say it. His mom could have assumed that the wounds were fine and just said, "Okay, go eat dinner." Go hang out with your friends. Go do it. But what do? We cleanse the wounds. And then we check the wounds periodically as they heal. So anytime a child is exposed to any harm, you assume that the negative consequences are there and you work your way backwards. So if my son wipes out on his skateboard and he is harmed, I'm going to clean the wound, I'm going to dress the wound, and I'm going to check the wound periodically. And if it heals properly, then I can just relax. If it starts inflamed, the wound doesn't scab over or heal, if he's experiencing ongoing tenderness in that area, I have to go up. So yes, anytime a child, an African child, comes to harm, comes to trauma, yes, you assume the worst and work your way back. What? How else do you do? Yes, I assume the child is traumatized and I work my way back from there. And I would do that same with an adult. If an adult has a traumatic experience, and I know people that are very close to me that went through conditions, went through states that would have maybe broken me. But they come through it all right. Everybody's different. But as a mental health, physiological health, you take the precautions. And the fact that we could be so flippant with the loss of life, so flippant with the taking of the life, I see online a lot. People will see somebody did something. Oh, he needs to chair. He needs to take. I mean, we're as bloodthirsty as our oppressors in a lot of ways. We're as gun obsessed as our oppressors. So I think it was a fortunate outcome to an unfortunate condition. It is nothing to celebrate. It is nothing to celebrate. And the fact that people are celebrating this as this is some milestone, it bothers me how we carry this. I look at the community. I look at our collective disposition, our collective mentality. There are outstanders. There are people who want to put a gun in every child's hand, and there are people who want to disarm the whole community. There are extremes. But from a rationalist point of view, we say what is in the best interest of our people and how does it reflect and resonate with the larger community. And I really don't like how we're carrying this. I really don't like how we're perceiving this. I really don't like what this says about our collective consciousness, our community, and our disposition. We don't know what a success, we don't know what a victory is. We lose so much, we don't know what victory looks like. And we mimic our oppressors in the worst way. But I digress. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I didn't even want to speak on it. But if your conclusion is anything other than that situation was a tragedy, and it was probably the best possible outcome for the worst possible condition, it's nothing to celebrate. And the objective here is to, and not to even mention that I've been hearing rumors that brother was affiliated and they calling that young boy an op and shit like that. And retaliation is really big, in this city. So where y'all at? If y'all really think this young man is a hero, when that one cracker went to a Black Lives Matter protest and shot 2 people, and they carrying him all around the country like he's a hero. They gave that boy $1 million. So what y'all gonna do? What y'all gonna do? And I hear everybody talking about the tragedy. And like we halfway. Ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. Ain't no such thing as halfway conscious. So you can talk about, if you're going to focus on, you're going to give energy and attention to the triumph of rescuing that woman from a potentially life-threatening assault, you also have to give equal amount of attention to the trauma that the incident caused as well. Who said anything about criminal record? I don't know. Anyway, moving on. We done lost affirmative action, y'all. That's what we're here to talk about. Yeah. Speech from arrested. Who was it? Oh no, it was Boots Riley from the coup. He said, if we had as much smoke for our oppressors as we had for ourselves, the blood would never flow again. And I talk to all these people that be online. I'm just saying, I don't know. I don't know, but I just hear people saying that, but maybe I should be carrying forth rumors. But anyway, moving on. But yeah, most of the guns in our community are aimed at us. That's why I say, I did a whole presentation called Armed and Dangerous. The oppressors don't fear our guns. The oppressors don't fear our guns. I guess I'll put that in the thing. It's called Armed and Dangerous. The system doesn't fear our guns. If you want to talk about Black people and gun culture, guns are not revolutionary. Guns are not liberatory. Guns are tools. They're inert. Guns are as revolutionary as we make them. Guns can be liberation, or guns can be tools for our ongoing oppression. But anyway, I shared that in the comments. But let's move on. I wanted to talk about affirmative action because, again, I think most of us are missing the point. You have 2 extremes. You have people that talk about the tragedy of affirmative action, of threatening or invalidating affirmative action, which is what it did, because and you talk about the indifference. A lot of people consciously talk about the indifference of losing affirmative action. And with most things, the radical analysis tends to deviate from both extremes, which is weird because people think that radicals are extremists. But when you engage in radical analysis, and again, radicalism is nothing more than looking at the core, looking at the seed, looking at the root, looking beyond the surface, looking beyond the symptoms, looking beyond headlines, looking beyond what the propaganda machine wants to impose on you. So what's weird is people call radicals or radicalism extremist, but generally radical analysis will give you a proper balance between extremes. The people who say, well, losing affirmative action is doom and gloom, is the worst thing that could happen for Black folks, or losing affirmative action is absolutely irrelevant, and we don't need integration, and things were better for us before civil rights, and things were better for us when we had strong Black families, and that myth. Both of those extremes are absolutely wrong. The repeal of affirmative action does impact Black people as a whole in the United States, but not for the reason many of us suspect. I mean, for Black folks, like both of my sons are pretty smart. You know, I got one in college already, so I don't know. He ain't going for undergrad. He ain't doing no Ivy Leaguing. You know, after we get him through undergrad and he gets his bachelor's, you know, his education is his business. That's all. Our obligation ends. And my other son, you know, he could get, you know, he's a straight A student, honor roll student. And I guess he could go to Ivy League, but I wouldn't encourage it. I wouldn't want my son to go into that den of iniquity, that nest of vipers. You know, the first Black man to get a PhD? No, was he the first Black man to graduate? Carter G. Woodson said that Harvard has ruined more Negroes than bad whiskey. And I have to say, I know some Ivy League Negroes. Let me not say Negroes because I know them. I might be seeing them at family holidays, you know, gatherings. But I know some Black people, some distinguished Black people. You know, I worked for a sister for a couple of years. I worked for a sister that attended Harvard undergrad and got a master's degree from Harvard. And I forgot where she got her PhD, but I think that was also Ivy League, but it definitely wasn't Harvard. But everybody, you know, you go into her beautiful office with beautiful mahogany furniture and all these artifacts collected from around the world. And she was a Harvard graduate. And she was what I call a deer in the headlights Negro. I think Obama's a deer in the headlights Negro, who's also a Harvard. And what I mean by deer in the headlights is, if you know the stereotype is when a deer encounters a bright light, it's in darkness. And then when the deer encounters bright light, they freeze. So when the truth, and we call light illumination. Lucifer comes from light because Lucifer gave man knowledge of good and evil, and put man on level with God. So there was always this association with light and enlightenment and thinking. Light, they say that with the Promethean era, we are Promethean culture, meaning that fire drives the society. We burn coal, we burn candles to burn the midnight oil. So light and illumination has always been associated with knowledge. And when they say you don't have knowledge, they say you're in the darkness. When Europeans said that they regressed, they had the Greek and Roman philosophy and knowledge, and then they lost contact. The Greek Empire and the Greco-Roman culture collapsed, and the Europeans entered the Dark Ages. So all that, they beat that to death. So when I say a deer in the headlight Negro, it's a Negro who freezes up when they are exposed to real knowledge, when they are exposed to the light. So you have a highly educated, let's go back with Dr. Bobby E. Wright. Dr. Bobby E. Wright says there's a difference between education and training. To educate means to bring out. To educate means that you are giving the skills and the wisdom, the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to address and speak to the needs, your needs and the needs of your community. Training teaches you to analyze and to attack and correct other people's problems. Bobby E. Wright, who was an MD, highly educated, went to a Ivy League school, said that we can receive training from our oppressors' institutions, but we must receive education from our community because we are oppressed. So the systems and institutions are controlled, directed, and created to sustain a status quo that oppresses us. So we can get training from the mainstream institutions or formal institutions, but we must receive education from our community. So Harvard pedigree Black people are deer in the headlights because they can run off. Like you meet somebody that went to Harvard Law, Harvard Political Science, like Obama, they can quote you the Constitution. They can run down the definitions, the protocols, the standards, everything. You meet a Harvard scientist, physicist, they know the formulas, they know the canon, the from Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, to who's that guy that just died? To Stephen Hawking, and read all the works. Somebody from the arts, like Paul Robeson, go to a Negro, you can stand up there and recite Shakespeare from memory. No, you meet a Black person that has gone through and has an Ivy League education. They know everything about white folks' business there is to know. Any problem white folks put on the table, Barack Obama was able to pull the United States out of the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. Barack Obama took the healthcare system. Obama was a master administrator. I study public policy. My formal education is in political science. And all y'all know I talked about Obama like a dog before he got in office, before he was elected. I talked about him like a dog. But from a purely academic, policy, administrative point of view, Obama was a mastermind in administration, in governance, in mass appeal, in marketing. He was masterful. Unbelievable. One of the greatest. I remember when I was getting my political science undergrad, I had to study Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was considered the first academic president. Before Woodrow Wilson, presidents were military men, and they were entrepreneurs. They were agriculturalists. So they were men of big affairs. They were the barons and the men of stature. And Woodrow Wilson changed that thing and says, listen, I'm not going to govern as a man of stature, as a natural born leader. I'm going to govern as an academic. He was racist as fuck. He was scum of the earth. But he studied, if you study political science in their institutions, they're going to shove Woodrow Wilson down your throat. And I mean African professors. I had professors from Kenya. I had professors from Nigeria. And all over the African continent, the African democracies, they're studying Woodrow Wilson administrative techniques and administrative style, even his campaign style, how he could literally campaign on keeping us out of a war. He literally ran for president saying, listen, I will not get the United States into foreign entanglements. And the day he took the oath of office, he flipped the whole society. He ran for president and got elected by a nation that would say, we oppose the Great War. We don't want to get into foreign entanglements. And he says, you elect me, I will keep you out of foreign entanglements. And after getting elected, he so manipulated the public. He was such a master manipulator and administrator. Had the same people that elected him to keep him out of a war demanding that they take us to war. Take us to war. And it's evil. Yes, it's evil, but it's still masterful. So I'm not even saying this from a position of advocating or supporting. I'm saying this from a position of being impressed. What did Del Jones tell us? Never underestimate them. Never underestimate your enemy. Because he said, damn, they're good. They're good at what they're doing. So anyway, I haven't seen such a masterful politician in the time of crisis than Obama. Obama still got Negroes. Obama ran as the hope, as the fulfillment of King's dream, and proceeded to undermine everything related to the interest and advancement of African people, and still got African people loving them. I ain't never betrayed black people, and they hate my guts, let alone headed the empire. Shit. Man, if I had Obama's skill, shit. But anyway, all that to say, I'm getting a little bit off point. Don't get me talking about. All that to say, black folks in this system and in this government have a peculiar relationship. Radical analysis. I think if you're not radical, then you are a cog. If you are not radical, even if you're on the right team, even if you're pro-black, even if you're pan-African, even if you're anti-capitalist, if you are not radical in your analysis and radical in your solutions, you're wasting your time. You know, you be out there with, I'm sick of naming names. But a good example of someone who's pro-black or pan-African, but not radical. It's like Umar, that Kwesi and Fuma. But anyway, let me not start mess. So what does radical analysis say? Let's first talk about, and this is on affirmative action. What we have to understand is that the repeal of affirmative action, it's not even really about black people. And here's why. White people, the majority population in the United States, are people who identify as white. And they are losing ground. White people, and I hate going over this because I talk about it so much, but I guess I have to. Let me look at time. Let me be respectful of time. We're going to be out of here within 45 minutes. So anyway, I'm going to try to speed run this. And if you got questions later, then I'll deal with that. So white people, prior to World War II and the New Deal reforms, white people in this country were by and large poor and landless peasants. The white elites saw black people as property and white people as peasants, right? And so white people, when the elites of the West, Western Europe and the United States, Canada, Australia, when they saw an opposition of communism, that the potential for radical uprising going all the way back to the late 1800s, the United States has been combating, and I'll just keep it to the United States, but this really is a global phenomenon. The United States was battling anarchism, socialism, and communism. And when they saw a successful communist uprising outside of the United States understood, the U.S. capitalists understood, we have to make concessions. Because the more we squeeze our citizens, the more the message of the anarcho-syndicalist, the more the arguments of the socialist and the communist will be more attractive to the white majority. So the white majority started making concessions. And the white elite started making concessions, and the white majority started receiving rewards. That's what it was, to stop or to upend a communist revolution. The white elite said that we will give a little bit more to the white masses. Now, black folks, we during this was fresh out of slavery, fresh on the tail end of Reconstruction. We were going into formal Jim Crow. We were an afterthought in this. Even though we had ongoing struggle. This is white folks' business. And so throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, there was a great economic and social reform in the United States, and white folks in this country got more than they ever got before. An average white worker had labor rights. They were able to collectively bargain. There were agencies set up to protect their white right to unionize. There was workers' comp that didn't exist. Compensation, the 8-hour workday didn't exist. White folks was out here rioting. When white folks didn't get white riots, there's a book I have. They talk white folks. The majority of the riots, rebellions, burning, breaking windows, white folks are the number one rioting population in this country. Black folks going to have to riot for the next 200 years to come close. And so it's really hypocritical and ignorant for white folks can't ever fix their mouth to criticize black people taken to the streets. But I digress. So the white folks got all these rewards. They got GI bills. They had federal support in purchasing houses, and it goes all the way back, right? So white folks, this because they had the sit-down deeds and the land, and the white folks that got in on that, the WASP, and then the Irish, because the United States used to discriminate against Irish, against Catholics, Southern European, Italians. Any white people that were not part of the mythological, even everything you think bad about black folks, where black people talk about we are the real Hebrews, or we are the real, we all Egyptians, we are all kings and queens. White folks was doing that 100 years before black folks even got off the plantation. They white Anglo-Saxons, right? They not Anglo-Saxons, these white folks, but they said we're the WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, gobbled up everything, and all these other white folks campaigning for their white card. The slum dwellers. Before, when somebody said you so ghetto, they were talking to a Catholic Irish, a Catholic Italian, or a Jewish person from Southern or Central or Eastern Europe. That used to be the ghetto. Those used to be the gangbangers. Those were the ones doing the drive-bys and the Model T Fords and the Gatling guns. Everything they say bad about us is them. Everything. They put all their shit on us. I digress. So anyway, white folks, a bunch of white folks who weren't white before got affirmative action, got their come up, got their welfare, right? And so these white people, after a couple of generations, like Donald Trump, whose father was a sleazy grandfather was a sleazy 2-bit hustler who didn't speak English. And now he's the epitome of American. And for 90% of black people in the United States, our ancestors were in this country for 2 centuries before Trump's grandfather ever got off that sleazy, moldy, musty, rat-infested boat. And now he swear he more American than us because of his pasty skin. It's such a hustle, but I digress. There's so many layers to this. But anyway, so after a couple of generations of getting welfare, set aside, after a couple of generations of white affirmative action, to the white elites giving handouts from the government, hand-ups to the white masses, white people started being told by the same white elites that you got what you got from hard work. And you don't need, and within that was affirmative. She said, everything you got from hard work, sacrifice, being moral, having stable families, everything you earned it. You worked for it. You sacrificed. You pulled yourself up by your bootstrap. And so those white folks fell for that okie doke. So from the 70s to the 80s, white folks started saying, get rid of all that shit. The moment, because black people were cut off from that pipeline. And up until the 60s, black folks was like, yo, y'all gonna have to hook us up. We've been citizens longer than these folks. We've been citizens. We've been here long before black people for 200 years was sitting there watching people come off the docks, not speaking English. You can line up every flag in the world. They couldn't even pick out the U.S. flag. We saw people coming through Ellis Island a century after our ancestors got here and getting all the rights and privileges of citizenship that we were denied. So black folks said enough is enough. And then there was a linchpin. At that same time, the capitalists was like, damn, we need the resources of the third world. That's what they called it back then. Now it's the developing world before, or the global south. They keep renaming the same shit. They said, we're going to Africa, a decolonized Africa, and saying, hey, do trade deals with us, give us access to your resources, set up your democratic Western complicit state. Let us set up bases on your territory. They went to Central and Latin America, which is majority non-white. They went to Africa, which is majority non-white. They went to India, which is majority non-white. In their own colonies, they were asking the Native Americans, the Aboriginal people of Australia, New Zealand. They were asking the Aboriginal and the Samoans and the Pacific Islanders and the Vietnamese, who are black-skinned people, and the Koreans. They went all over the world saying, what's that guy, baby? Won't you come my way? What's that guy's name with the one eye who's doing Fed time? Anyway, what's his name? Come on, comments. Don't leave me hanging. I have to look it up. Betty Wop, god damn. Thank you. Comments, boy. Them comments be holding a brother down. So anyway, Fetty Wap, United States during the Cold War was Fetty Wapping. They went all over the non-white world saying, baby, won't you come my way? And the people were like, wait a second. You want me to rock with you when the people who look like me, when them brown skin, African features, African hair texture, rhythmic, my brothers and sisters, I treat them like dirt. Babylon, I treat you like dirt. You treat my people like dirt over there. And yet you want me to rock with you instead of the Chinese communists, instead of the Russians who got Kalashnikovs? I'd rather you want me to, I don't want your M16. Give me the Kalashnikov. I don't want your dollar. Give me the ruble. So the United States was like, oh no, we love our Negroes, our captive Negroes, our backyard domestic Negroes. We love them. Here, look, we giving them rights. Here, look, we giving them Nobel Peace Prizes. Here, look, hey, civil rights was a byproduct, was tied to decolonization, was tied to non-alignment, Latin America. And that's what these ADOS Negroes don't understand. We didn't get it through praying. We got it through slaying. So Africans, it was a worldwide movement that all tied in together. And Che Guevara and John Kennedy both understood the same thing. In order to upend this man's system, you'd have to have Vietnams all over the world. And the capitalists said, we can't have Vietnam in Vietnam, Vietnam in the Congo, Vietnam, the Vietnam in the Congo will lead to Vietnam in Tanzania, and we can't have a Panamanian Vietnam and a Nicaraguan Vietnam and a Colombian Vietnam. This history is suppressed. There were guerrilla, leftist, socialist, anarchist, black radical uprisings all over the world. So at that same time, they were like, we had to give concessions to the white masses. We had to give welfare to the white masses. We have to give affirmative action to the white masses, but they got theirs 3 generations before they even started thinking about us. And then they started giving this to us. So white folks sitting on top of the myth that they worked hard, that they didn't have set-asides, they didn't have government handouts, they didn't have welfare. We're like, look at these Negroes, these unworthy Negroes. And I'm having to pay taxes, and I'm having to feed these Negroes, and I forget about the soup kitchens. White folks forgot all about the Great Depression. They forgot all about the Dust Bowl. They forgot all about the Jewish slums, the Irish slums. They forgot all about the signs that said no Italians allowed. No Italians need apply. They forgot all about that because we all just one big mesh of white. And they got pissed off and they spent 20 years, the 70s and 80s, trying to destroy what is called the American Social Safety Net. So the U.S. Intelligence Agency says two things happen. The threat of communism internally and abroad was greatly diminished. They understood long before they announced it. They used to run around talking about the missile gap. Well, we can give you all these benefits, but the communists are outpacing us. And they were managed to successfully to propagandize and indoctrinate the masses to associate capitalism with democracy and democracy with freedom, and associate communism with tyranny, communism with oppression, communism with dictatorship, and dictatorship with poverty. And you had starving people in the United States, people without educational opportunities, without health care, without even solid, stable housing, saying, I'd rather be dead than red. I'd rather be dead than red. So this is all this history. And this is when black folks started getting concessions. They gave white folks concessions to stop them from carrying out a communist revolution. They gave black people concessions in order to better manipulate the non-white world and gain access and influence over the non-white majority, and to prevent radical revolutionary uprising in their own backyard, because radical revolutionary uprising in their own backyard would greatly diminish or thwart their attempts to impose their will abroad. And all that four-dimensional chess y'all act like these black demagogues are playing. It's not even four-dimensional chess. It's just basic imperialism. Divide and conquer imperialism, right? So white folks said, we're going to get Nixon in here. We're going to get Reagan in here. We're going to get these white conservatism to stop the benefits. We're going to put an end to welfare. We're going to put an end to set-asides. We're going to put an end to these lazy, no good, undeserving bumps. So Reagan and Clinton destroyed this social safety net. And at the time Clinton destroyed welfare was the time that they finally admitted that white people receive more welfare and there's a greater dependence on welfare by the white masses than the blacks. And now I can't even get into the COINTELPRO aspects. But this is what a radical analysis looks like. So anyway, white folks started tearing shit up, tearing down their own fucking parachutes. They started poking holes in their parachutes because they saw it as black folks getting benefits. They thought unworthy, lazy black people, the myth of the welfare queen. So white folks blew up their socialistic reforms, New Deal reforms, the democratic socialist reforms. They blew that up and they wanted individualistic merit-based society. You get what you can. And they said, forget the government and let's undo, and they either would freeze minimum wage, they would freeze, they disconnected social security benefits from there used to be regular, there was a plan for social security was supposed to be a universal income. So as incrementally, social security the age for eligibility was supposed to incrementally come down and expand to everybody had some basic income. So they blew all that shit up thinking that, well, it's only going to hurt the blacks. You can get white folks to literally vote for anything by telling them it's only going to hurt the blacks. Or you can get them to vote against something because it's helping blacks, or you can get them to vote for something to hurt the blacks. White folks would vote for a giant meteor striking the earth if you told them the trajectory of that meteor was to Africa. Right? So, white folks blew up all the regulation, banking regulations. They blew up upper income taxation. They blew all that shit up, and now they're suffering. And so now that white folks are suffering, they're looking at shit like this ain't right. That's why that whole thing, that white folks running to the Capitol to smear feces all over the Capitol. Just go Google January 6th feces White folks, they show you the videos. I'm sure everybody's seen the videos of white folks storming the Capitol. They never show the videos or the photos. And when they had to go clean up the Capitol, like you see when black people rebel, and you see people out in the streets boarding up buildings and sweeping glass and going into places that have been quote unquote looted, where black folks have went in and discovered retail liberation. They have went and brought democracy to the retail sector. They just in there cleaning. When you go and look up the clean up at the Capitol 6, they're wearing hazmat suits and rebreather masks. Because them white folks didn't just go in there breaking shit and stealing shit. They went in there smearing feces and urine all over their own Capitol. Don't believe me? Just watch. Go look it up. And we let them get away with it. If black folks was out here rebelling and smearing feces, it would be front page news. There'd be all kind of sociologists writing books about black fixation on feces and all kind of shit. White folks smear feces. Oh, it's just, some good old boys. Shit. So anyway, the white elites know how deadly white folks are because they're the deadliest white folks. So what they've been feeding white people since the 90s are scapegoats. Because they were like, we're taking everything what we gave white people. The communist threat is gone. Even though China's still communist, the communist threat to capitalism is gone. Russia is full-blown communist. The Chinese is state capitalist. It's not communist. It is state capitalism, central controlled communism. Capitalist propagandists and scholars and economists call this the end of history. Or as Reagan and Thatcher said, TINA, T-I-N-A. There is no alternative. This is a capitalist planet. And everybody is either full-blown capitalist or fully subjected to capitalism. So there is no more incentive to stop the white masses from going left or capitalist. But they're still suffering and they're lashing out. So what the white elite have always done, going all the way back to the monarchical, before democracy hit the West, going all the way back to monarchical systems, the white elites have always fed the violent Yurugu white masses scapegoats. They would always create some type of minority or outgroup for the white people to murder, to attack, to demean, and to dehumanize, to satisfy their own internal disappointment and dissatisfaction. You go back to pre-colonial era, it could be witches, women, old women. It could be Jews, long before Hitler. Hitler didn't teach himself. Hitler did not indoctrinate himself into anti-Semitism. Hitler learned anti-Semitism from the very people who claimed they defeated Hitler, from the British, from the Spanish, from the Americas. They out Hitler. So they always, the Jews are stealing our babies. Blood libel. Or the Protestants. If you're in a majority Catholic state, then the Protestants are the reason the crops didn't grow and you're starving. If you're in a majority Protestant, if you're in England and you're Anglican, then it's the Catholics. Or it's not the Catholics or the Protestants, it's the Muslims. So the white people have always been fed scapegoats, right? So you got meth out where white America is suffering. White America is losing home and losing status. And the average white man said, I was born to rule the world and I'm barely making ends meet. Remember that viral video of that white man in the airport? And when the police were trying to subdue him, he was like, you're treating me like a black man. So these white people are like, we're out here living like N-words. And so they tell the white people, you don't have the resources, the status, the wealth, the power of your ancestors, where you never did, actually. You never had it. But you don't have it because of immigrants. It's the damn immigrants coming here to take your job. It's the gays, the transgenders. If not your daughter whom you've impregnated and strung out on meth, she'd be an Olympic athlete if it wasn't for transgender women athletes. So it's the LGBTQAI that are destroying America's values. They can't blame communists anymore. The Muslims gave them a good run. Muslims had like almost a 30-year run since 92, not even before September 11th. Remember when they went over to save Kuwait from the bloodthirsty dictator Saddam? They had been fighting and making the Muslim the boogeyman since George W. Bush. And the previous administration, Ronald Reagan, said that the Mujahideen, who were the predecessors to the Taliban, said that they were the founding fathers, that the Taliban leadership reminded him of the America's founding fathers. These are the men who will bring democracy. And why? Because they were decapitating communists. These are communist killers. So they're good in my book. Who cares what they do to women? Who cares what they do? Mutilation, murder, rape. Who cares? Do you kill communists and clear the way for capitalist exploitation of your communities or your nation's resources? Do you do that? Yes. Oh, you're a hero. You're pro-democracy. And the very next administration, before Reagan and Nancy and Ronald Reagan packed up their filthy draws and their tarot cards, this good Christian president was very heavily into the mysticism. Before they got out, George Bush, who had one term, took the United States from admiring the strong-willed and pro-democracy Middle East to saying these people are trying to drink our blood and eat our babies. And then, so the anti-Islamic Muslim hordes from the East started, and so anyway, that gave them a good run. Had white folks passing laws against Sharia law. There are state legislatures in America that have in their constitution a provision to forbid the implementation of Sharia law. So that had a good run. And then they were like, white folks literally went from the Latin sensation. They were all living La Vida Loca and doing the Macarena and eating Tex-Mex food. They loving Latin American to like, these people are invading our country. They always have black folks to fall on. But it's kind of hard to drum up the black threat because they like, well, the blacks are just killing other blacks in South Central Los Angeles, South Side of Chicago, and the boogie down Bronx. But anyway, so they're telling, you're suffering from immigrants. Women, including white women. The white woman is the greatest ally and the primary enemy of the white man. If you don't believe me, just read their own literature. The white woman is down for racism. And just as the white woman helps her man rise up on racism, he beats her down with sexism. It's a sick relationship, which I can't get into right now. But that's another thing that I see black folks mimicking and gobbling up from it. But anyway, so women in the workforce, it's women, it's immigrants, it's gays, and the queers and the trans, right? Who is it not? Who is never to blame for white folks' problems? The white elites. The white elites are never to blame. And the only way to become a white elite who runs afoul of the white masses is to be perceived as doing good for other people. Not that you don't have to actually do good. If you are a white billionaire and they get the perception that you support anything good, then you become Soros. There are white billionaires all over the world, and you say to a white person, name a white billionaire, an evil white billionaire. They all say Soros. Is Soros truly more evil than the billionaire Trump or the Elon Musk or any of these other the Koch brother? It's no longer the Koch brothers. No. Why do they love all those other billionaires but hate George Soros? Because there's the false impression that George Soros is trying to do something good in the world. Same thing with they don't hate Bill Gates. They'll say they do. They don't hate Bill. Bill Gates is taking over. They hate Bill Gates because there's the false impression that Bill Gates is trying to feed the world and and trying to do something good. All billionaires are evil. I think billionaires shouldn't exist. But when you look at the billionaires they ignore or worship versus the billionaires they hate and love, what is the distinction? So when they look at it, so what is the Supreme Court decision? This is a message to white people. White people who didn't graduate middle school are sitting around their house, Negroes going to Harvard, as if you would have ever gotten to Harvard. The same thing with welfare reform. I was in Kansas and I was working in Raytown, Missouri, and between Raytown, Missouri and Kansas. These are two areas with a shit ton of poor white people. At the time where a lot of the welfare reform legislation had been implemented and already fully gone. And I said this, I got the chance to ask white people directly, you know, welfare has been upended. All the unworthy people no longer getting food stamps, housing vouchers, and cash payouts. I said, has it changed your life in the least? Not one person, because it didn't. So this one thing that the elites understood, because this was billionaires who orchestrated this whole thing. Billionaires create these astroturf organizations, and then these astroturf lawyers who are funded by billionaires go out and recruit people for lawsuit. It's not as though there was some white person or Asian student at Harvard that was like, I'm really mad about affirmative action because I feel that I lost opportunities because of affirmative action and I want to take my case to court. They go out and handpick people for these cases. You know, they go out and handpick an ideal victim, and then they say, we'll pay for all your legal fees. We just need you to sign here and we'll take care of everything. And so then they take these cases to the Supreme Court that aren't even real cases. And they're able to establish legal precedents, either implement laws or do away with laws to give white people the impression that the people who are harming them, the unworthy people who are getting benefits over them, are being attacked, which is to assuage. Now, the white billionaires understand sending black folks to Harvard ain't no threat to them. It's not going to harm their children. It's not going to, there ain't no white folks being harmed. In fact, white people derive great profit and great benefit from Negroes going off to the Ivy League. Let me say, if you go to Black Ivy, right? There's a, you can find it anywhere, but like, I'll get into that. But Negroes going to Harvard ain't denying or harming the system and the institutions of white domination. In fact, it is greatly benefiting it in many respects, from Obama on down. If you just go look, you know, at the prominent graduates of Ivy League institutions, black graduates of Ivy League institutions, Harvard wasn't pumping out black revolutionaries. Harvard wasn't pumping out black people who were going to oppose or destroy their power. But anyway, but they got to give red meat to their base. They got to feed the white majority. So like I said, they do this to signal. Remember, everything that conservatives, that racists accuse you of is a confession. So they always accuse the left of virtue signaling. But this Supreme Court decision was one giant virtue signal. It is to send a message to say, hey, white folks that are suffering in rural America, in suburban America, we hear you. We see that you're suffering, and we're attacking the people that are attacking you. We're building walls on the border. We're building that wall. We're putting in anti-trans legislation. We're doing away with affirmative action. All shit that ain't gonna do a goddamn thing. We're cleaning up homeless encampments. We're bulldozing homeless encampments. Where Trump is now wants to give the death penalty. He wants to be like the serial killer Filipino president, the Honduran reactionary dictators. We're gonna kill drug dealers. We're gonna bring back the death penalty. And white people are like, yeah. And they ain't gonna do shit to fix nothing that white folks are going through, because none of these solutions that the right-wing reactionary, we're gonna do away with all these woke policies. They even want to do away with we're gonna stop abortion. They're doing all this shit to virtue signal to the white right-wing virtue signal. Right? And what did I told y'all last time? Everything, black people, we're the canaries in the coal mine. Right? We're the canaries in the coal mine. When something happens to us, it comes back on white folks tenfold. Remember, I came up, both of my parents had severe drug addiction, crack cocaine, crack era. I'm a crack baby. Right? And unfortunately, let me not say that. There was no drugs in my system but I was from that era where they were talking rhetoric about crack babies and all that bullshit, which is a myth. You know, there are meth babies. There are babies born with withdrawal from opiates. The crack baby phenomenon was just made up anti-black propaganda, but I digress. And they were like, oh, white people. Black people just can't control themselves. All they want to do is just get high and don't want to work, right? And black Ivy Leaguers, I talked to them. I looked them in their face because, like I said, I was working grassroots organizing, front lines of the drug war. And I go to these Negroes with status and with money and positions and say, hey, you know, they're attacking us. They're bulldozing. They got these crash units. They got these police kicking in our doors, waving the 4-4. And they would look at me. And I quote them directly and say, nobody's forcing you to take these drugs. I don't care if the CIA dropped the drug and brought a truckload of drugs and dropped them in the middle of your community. Nobody forced you to take it. And those same Negroes now are like, drug addiction is a disease. It's a public health crisis. Them same Negroes that criminalized my mother, that ostracized my community, are now so sympathetic and humanitarian approach to drug addiction. But drugs, opiates are hitting white folks. And look, it took the CIA, FBI, international drug cartels. It took this huge network to bring drugs to the minority, poor black folks, to get us strung out. It didn't take nothing but one greedy family, the Sackler family. It didn't the CIA, FBI, or the intelligence lies. Like, white folks is mad vulnerable. But even during the height of the crack epidemic, white folks was consuming more crack than black folks. Even at the height of the crack, they just weren't policed. White folks smoke more weed. They do more drinking and driving. They carry more, like the whole stop and frisk. Even during the height of stop and frisk, even though white folks made up the majority of people in the city, they were a minority of people stopped, and they still had a higher percentage and more likelihood to have illegal weapons or illegal drugs on them than minority. They're the real criminal, right? But anyway, white folks, the drugs hit the white folks, right? Even like everything from polio, they put black folks in slums. Didn't give us adequate health care. They want to play games with syphilis and Tuskegee. And here come polio. White folks out. White folks put us in slums. White folks want to lock us down in the inner cities, put us in under-resourced housing projects. And here come the housing collapse, taking trillions of dollars away from them. Everything they do to us come back on them, but they won't stop. It hasn't been able to stop them, but that's just how it do. So anyway, this was a virtual signal to the white majority. I know black people, we take it personal. We take that shit mad personal, but it's not as big a loss to black folks as it is to white people. Some of the most brilliant people, some of the most brilliant mathematicians come out of Nigeria, come out of parts of black and brown people are a backbone of a lot of these institutions and academics. From the arts, we just think we phenomenal at sports, but the Hidden Figures, that's why I hate that show, Hidden Figures. They should have called it The Figures Weren't Hidden. They made the figures public. They published the figures. The figures were available to any academic that wanted to research. They didn't hide the figures. They hide the niggas. They should have called that movie Hidden Niggas, because that's who they put in the basement and hid away. And it's insulting that we just weirdos. Forgive me if y'all hearing all these 4th of July fireworks going on. Here I am, one of the biggest black communities on the eve of 4th of July, and black folks out here. I don't know. I don't think black folks are celebrating independence. I think they just blowing shit up. This is a day. This is a time of year we can blow. That's what I'm a hope in my heart. But anyway, black folks. So Harvard, and these Ivy League schools, many of the white people are legacy, right? So they're the inbred, pampered, spoiled children of wealthy white folks. And many of them rode the backs of the so-called minority students. Just like many of these multinational corporations. Even though y'all think they still hidden figures, the hidden niggas, right now, name a multinational corporation. Even when you look at Twitter, and they were like, he's firing all these people. You see all these white folks walking out of Twitter with their boxes. But you know who's still at Twitter? All the people on those special tech visas, brown skin, black skin people. Brown skin, black skin people. Even now, they're like, we're going to build a wall and keep the immigrants out. Now they can't get their food harvested. So it's really, let me tell you. And right as they speak, they're like, okay, no more colorblind policies, no more affirmative action. And a lot of brilliant people with black skin, African descendants, they're going to be going off to these other institutions. But anyway, so they did this to virtue signal to white folks because they have to keep giving white. So you're going to see policies that they keep giving red meat to the ravaged white folks, the savage, ravaged white masses who are not getting what they want. And these white people are joining militia groups and skinhead groups. And what the white elite have to do is say, listen, we are economically hyper exploiting the white majority. The white majority are the main people, because we grew up with our elders telling us you got to work half as hard to get twice as good. We grew up you better be thankful for what you can get in any opportunity. We still got that old, not disrespect the ancestors, but we tell our kids some weird shit. Whereas white folks, they're like, you shall inherit the world as your oyster. So when every white man in the United States thinks I'm going to be the next Trump, what they say, every white man in the country is a poor white man is just an embarrassed millionaire. My fortune, make my way in the world. Urugu. And so the elites are going to be pacifying, are going to continue to do public demonstrations of reducing the status of the unworthy, unwashed foreigners, ethnic, religious, sexual, gender minorities and outgroups will constantly be targeted and diminished because white man says, listen, I can tolerate almost anything as long as I know there's somebody under me. So I will live in a filthy, lice-infected trailer park as long as the Negroes are in the ghetto. I will drink water out of a polluted water out of a public water fountain as long as I know the Negro has to drink a fountain from that wash off. This is something they understand about their own people. So there's a lot of suffering white people who are looking at this like, yeah, finally the white man gets a break. And if you go to right-wing media, white people are like, the only people you can legally discriminate against is the white male, the most oppressed, the most discriminated, the most despised, the most disadvantaged person in America is the heterosexual Christian white male. This is what they truly believe. And so they give them this base to placate them and to suppress us. And they get another benefit from that, because now Black people, we're about to embark on, we always fighting for the, what I call it is the treadmill or hamster wheel politics. White folks give us shit and take it away. Give us shit and take it away. So for the last 100 years, we keep fighting for the same shit, and we don't look beyond the horizon. So they got us fighting police brutality. I say, ask yourself right now, name something Black people are fighting for now that we weren't fighting for 100 years ago. Name something we're fighting for now that we weren't fighting for 100 years from now. And I don't deny that Black people made progress. I know a lot of times folks say, oh, Black people ain't gone nowhere. We ain't made no progress. We've made tremendous progress. We've made progress. We've made so much progress that there are some of the most highly educated, highly trained and skilled and highly resourced people in think tanks, in the Pentagon, boardrooms, in corporate boardrooms, in academic centers, studying us and trying to countermeasure. It's, remember, counterintelligence program. They didn't call it counter militancy program. They didn't call it a counter weapons program. They called it counterintelligence to subvert. So they understand we are a threat. And I always have to argue with Black people like, we things are worse now than ever. We ain't got nothing. We ain't gonna be nothing. Things are horrible. I'm like, our oppressors don't agree with you. They invest an enormous amount of resources to maintain the status quo, and they feel threatened. They feel vulnerable. But I digress. So, one, they got us fighting for shit that we already got and didn't benefit from. So our oppressor says, listen, here's the concession. Here's affirmative action. We got affirmative action became the official policy for Black people, because white folks have had it since the first day of America, since Plymouth Rock fell on us. They said in 1961, John F. Kennedy implemented the first formal affirmative action program, right? For Blacks. And from 61 to now, Black people of various industries, and most affirmative actions aren't even law, they're voluntary. They're not written. They weren't passed by any legislature. They are informal policies. They are executive orders or executive actions and internal corporate private industry PR policies. You know, these white folks acting like police and sheriffs and deputies and armed federal agents are kicking in doors, putting, shotguns in the faces of CEOs and university presidents. Like, show us your demographics. It's been voluntary. So they like I said, this is a scapegoat. This is a scapegoat, right? They know it ain't no threat, but they know that they say, hey, if we can get Black people right now fighting police brutality, fighting affirmative action, fighting for affirmative action, fighting against police brutality. So, I mean, we've been fighting against since before the paddle rollers, Fugitive Slave Act. We've been fighting police brutality for over 100 years, fighting for education, fighting against healthcare discrimination. They deny us access to healthcare, and then when they grant us access to healthcare and bring us into the facilities, they start to mistreat us, exploit us, experiment on us, neglect us. So we got to fight to get in, and once we get in, we got to fight to be treated justly. So Black people don't really take time to say, listen, how do we imagine the world? How do we want the world to be constructed? What type of social relationship do we want between one another? What type of relationship do we want with the ecosystem? How do we want to identify, value, extract, process, renew, sustain resources? We can't even get to imagining and constructing the world because we're in this perpetual state of trauma, perpetual state of struggle, perpetual state of reacting. perpetual state of trying to validate and reaffirm our basic humanity, let alone utilizing and implementing our humanity to improve the state of human existence. I say all the time, one of the greatest things we lost was not our language, was not our indigenous religion, was not our resources, our gold. The greatest thing we lost, and our greatest scholar, Amos N. Wilson, will agree with me, the greatest thing the African lost through the Ma'afa, and not just the ones brought here in chains, but the ones who were colonized back home, the greatest thing we lost was our imagination. You talk to the average black person and they don't go beyond capitalism. They don't go beyond the borders set up by colonizers, the borders set up by invaders. They don't go beyond the technological, ideological, the cultural constraints of the shortest lived people, the most savage, unimaginative people. And if you start to talk beyond that box, they call you a crazy nigga. I was just on Earn Your Liberation, and people are like, Diallo's idealistic. Now, the people that believe that you can have infinite growth on a finite planet, people that believe that even though the vast majority of people who start businesses, upwards of 90% of white people who start businesses fail, believe that we can have entrepreneurial empowerment or entrepreneur-based or capitalist-based development. People believe that we can destroy the ecosystem while developing the economy, and that is a survivable scenario for humanity or black people. But I'm idealistic because I say we should live within the limits of ecosystems, that we should use facts and logic, not faith and hope. I'm grounded, I'm realistic, and I get called idealistic, not because I'm saying shit that's not doable, but I'm saying shit that goes counter to the invented reality imposed through brutal, genocidal oppression, that I go against that. The greatest thing we ever lost was our imagination. But getting back to this affirmative action bullshit, forgive me. I'm being self-indulgent and I'm over time. Let me sum it up because I ain't gonna hold y'all too late. I appreciate y'all being here. Please support. You can become a supporter of the BroDiallo Show, Patreon, CashApp, Venmo, if you appreciate the efforts. I'm working on the newest book review. I got 2 book reviews in the kitty. I just got to sit down. So, show me love, show me appreciation, because I'm here. I am 100% listener and viewer supported. So I work for y'all, so y'all tell me how much it's worth. Y'all going to force me to unionize because I work for the people, and I'm going to be out at everybody's house protested. Get one of them inflatable rats. I'm gonna go on strikes like the writers union. Just if y'all don't show me love. Anyway, let's sum this up. Let's wrap this gavel up, B. So, before I finish my green tea, I want to bid y'all good night. Affirmative action is virtue signal. Now, you might say everything I said that I'm against affirmative action. I'm not against affirmative action. Why am I not against affirmative action? Even though I know it benefits them. Because here's the thing about oppression and our oppressors. They're incremental, right? So they never stop. They're either advancing or retreating. That is the nature of oppression. Your oppression is either going forward or it's recessing. There's never a line of oppression like, okay, this is enough oppression that we can generate profits, that we can maintain our position at the top of the hierarchy, and we can subdue or prevent any threats to our hold to power and our wealth. So this is a good amount of oppression. We'll just keep it here. At all times, whenever there's an imbalance, whenever there is a maladaptation or dysfunction, it's either advancing or retreating. Either the world is becoming more just day by day, or it's becoming more unjust day by day. And you might not feel that personally on your day-to-day trip, on your day-to-day life, but I guarantee you that's what's happening. So when you see overt steps of white people, there's an old quote, And I quote this a lot, and I don't know why I don't remember who says it. I'm sure someone will say it in the comments. But a guy that says, if you can get people to believe absurdities, you can get them to commit atrocities. All major atrocities. I don't mean just like crimes, or like when that brother attacked that sister in that place. And I wanted to say something about that place where that unfortunate thing happened. But every major atrocity is rooted in a fiction, in a fantasy that people make real in their minds and thus try to impose on reality. And that fiction could be something as simple as my lack of pigmentation makes me superior to those with pigmentation. That this paper, that this arbitrary paper has real value, or that I own and can control, and I own, yeah, Voltaire said it. I own it. I'm going to forget. I don't know why you put it in the comments. Next time I talk about atrocities and absurdities, I'm going to forget again. So I appreciate your effort in telling me who that was, but I'm just going to forget. I'm a terrible person. So the absurdity that the white majority think that they're oppressed, think that they're under attack, the absurdity of the white majority to think that wokeness, or the small fraction of people who are transgender, or who think the ravaged refugees at the south of the border, these absurdities that these people are a threat to their way of life, when the people who are the threat believe they're under threat, the people who owe us you ask the average white American, even your good liberal friend, they think that black people owe a debt to America. You ask them about reparations, they might say, well, I don't think it's the proper time, or it's just too impossible. The average white person in this country believes that we're in debt to them. In fact, that's what the record reflects. Black people have negative wealth, so we're in debt. That's an absurdity. Of people who live in a nation that owes them trillions of dollars are in debt to that very nation. So we live in an absurd reality that y'all get mad at me for calling out. Don't talk about people's beliefs. Don't talk about God. You always talk about So this Supreme Court decision, even though on a material level doesn't really impact black people, on an ideological, sociological level is very impactful. This is how they do. If you let them get away with calling you out your name, this is how it goes. This is how atrocities come about. They'll make fun of you. They'll mock your appearance. And if you don't check them, look at your nose, big Jew nose, big jungle bunny, big lips, nappy head, you nigga. They mock you. They call you names. I mean, you could say sticks and stones. Names will never hurt me. I don't care what I've had wealthy black people say, I don't care what you call me as long as you pay me. You can call me, you pay me enough money, you can call me whatever you want. You got black people out here making a lot of money and putting up with a lot of indignities because they're getting paid. Right? So they call you a name. And then they might say, hey, let me rub your head for good luck. I'll just rub your head for good luck. So it goes from verbal to physical. Like nothing painful. Nothing, oh, you're being too sensitive. I'm just going to rub your head for a little good luck. Let me touch your hair, dehumanizing. And it goes from that to level up. I won't just rub your hair for good luck. I'll grab your genitals. I heard all black men are hung. Or look at that, objectification. And so they start from calling you names, snickering behind your back, to mutilating your genitals, burning you alive, and hanging your charred corpse from a tree. All those things are connected. And you stop them from lynching you, they'll try to call you out your name. You stop them from calling you out your name, they'll try to legislate. They'll call you, they'll come up with code words. You can't say the N word anymore, so we'll say urban. We'll say inner city. We'll say thugs. We'll say predators. And we let them get away with calling them that, and we start calling those names ourselves. Right? And they always leveling up. So they say, listen, black people are in the streets fighting. Give them some concessions. We'll stop calling them colored. We'll call them black. They want to be called black. We'll let them wear afros in the workplace. Well, okay, let them have the afros in the first. Oh, whatever. What do they want? Give them some food stamps. Let them compete in the desegregate baseball. Desegregate baseball. Let some Negroes in the NBA. Let them play in the NFL. Let's give them some TV shows. Let them have some TV shows. Let them own a record label. Give them Motown. Oh, fine. Let them into our institutions. Hell, let them marry our daughters. They keep giving us these concessions. We say, give us liberation, and they say, here's a white wife. Here's a white husband. Give us liberation. Oh, here's some money, some fiat currency. Here's a good job and a title and an office with a view. Give us liberation. Here's the presidency, one of your own. Michelle, we got a black woman, unambiguous black woman as the first lady of the United States, who's dancing at the White House ball in a beautiful ball gown made by a black designer. And we're going to have the presidential first lady and presidential portrait painted by a black painter. And for many of us, we calm the fuck down. We calm down. But at the same time, they give us these superficial concessions. At the same time, they whittle away. They whittle away. They whittle away at it. So when black people out here looking at these successful Negroes, we're going to have black banks and black entrepreneurs and black businesses, black entrepreneurs and black STEM, black hustle, black grind. At the same time, we're over here distracted by that nonsense. They're like, let's do away with free lunch. Let's do away with the CHIP program, Medicaid. Let's do away with housing vouchers. And all these hustle and grind Negroes is like, yeah, that's for laziness. It's sounding just like the stupid white folks. Not even understanding that the benefits given to the poor, given to the unwashed masses, given to the poorly educated, given to the inmate and the ex-con, many of you Negroes with degrees in sociology, in psychology, in accounting, in administration, many of your middle-class black jobs are providing services to the poor and paid for by the state. So as you deny services and programs to the black masses, you're undermining the black middle class. And when you undermine the black middle class, the black elites are next in line. Like you had black people mad as hell when the city council gave $55 million to the refugees here sleeping in police stations. And I was breaking down where that money was going. They really was acting like, nobody said it, but they were like, they're going to go to each refugee and give them a stack of dollars. And I'm like, that you black professionals, you white professionals, you middle class, educated public servants are going to get that money to administer. You white homeowners and black landlords and white landlords, y'all the ones going to be giving housing and be giving the government money. We don't even understand how that shit works. And a lot of times when middle class people attack the poor, they're undermining their own economic foundations. Remember when they were outsourcing manufacturing jobs? And when people are like, I'm an architect, I'm a programmer, I'm a computer programmer, I'm a healthcare provider. They can't outsource me. Next thing you know, you got architects in India drawing up plans and sending them digitally to New York firms, pennies on the dollar. You got special visas for Asian and African programmers and code writers to come in here and work or just do the code from where they are. You had Filipino nurses being brought here by the shiploads, working for a fraction of the cost. But when they were doing it to unskilled laborers, y'all was cool with it. But where are we? This same old hustle. And they say black folks mad at migrants. Migrants coming here being told, oh, stay away from the blacks. The white masses mad at everybody except the white elite. Divide and rule. You can't say divide and conquer. We've been conquered for a couple of centuries now. It's divide and rule. But anyway, so what does affirmative action mean? It means that the systems and institution of global white domination want to level up. They're being more overt. The system is racist, but overt racism communicates something than institutional and background racism. It's all bad, but it's not universal, meaning that certain manifestations and racist techniques, racist methodology, stages, and racist agendas require different stages of for us that we have to adjust, have to make adjustments. And what we have to say, even if you're not in affirmative action, interested in affirmative action, which I think you shouldn't be, you have to be interested in the intensity and the level and the elevation of our oppressors and our enemies. If they're saying, you know, I ain't a woman, I'm anti-abortion, a lot of these black folks, idiotic black folks. If you're black and you're anti-abortion, or you think abortion is genocide and you advocate for taking away our women, you're a sucker. You're a reactionary. You're not revolutionary. But that's a whole nother. Anyway, I digress. Black people, affirmative action is a signal to whites, and it should be a wake-up call to black people. And we, as the conscious black folks who knew that affirmative action was nothing more than an empty concession in the first place, we have to begin our work. And I did want to share with you people, because there is a Black Ivy organizations. There are several Black Ivy groups of black people who went to Ivy League. Because I'm going to tell you how Ivy League is not a loss for black people. Black people no longer having an end to Ivy League is not a loss, but it's not inherently a win either. We have to turn it into a win. And I just want to share with you what's on the mind of these Black Ivy Leaguers, right? Getting old here. This glass is so dirty. But let me just show you what these Black Ivy Leaguers were up to. And then you can tell me whether or not we should rally around trying to get black folks back into Harvard. Okay? I have to put these glasses on. Hold on. All right? Come look at this. Let me tell you what's on these folks' minds, where their heads are at. All right? Where's the other things? This thing is so weird. Okay. This is Black Ivy Alumni League, is a premier advocacy organization representing alumni of 8 Ivy League institutions. Brown, I know black folks that went to Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Princeton, and the University of Pennsylvania, and Yale. We are committed to cultivating the community of over 50,000 alumni of African descent connected through our Ivy League experiences in the following ways: serve as professional and personal development resource, to impact our institutions, meaning whether it's public or private industry, by addressing recruitment and retention of students and faculty of African descent, and promote civic engagement in our membership and the greater community. So the Ivy League people are not a revolutionary force. And if you meet a revolutionary Ivy Leaguer, it's in spite of their Ivy League education, not because. In the world, my computer is acting funny, but I don't think it is funny if you're messing with my money. Wow, my computer. This is wild. Okay. Anyway, so let's just sum this up. Black people, the black masses, we should not sacrifice another generation trying to fight for or recapture shit we lost. We had, since 1961, we've had over half a century of affirmative action. Any benefits that were going to be derived collectively from affirmative action would have already been secured. But we also have to know that the United States is intensifying overt racism. And as it intensifies its overt racism, it will also intensify its injustices, because the racial set-asides, the deterioration and subversion of social programs and reforms point to an intensification of reactionary, fascist, and draconian laws. So even though we don't need to fight for, affirmative action, from my point of view, we still need to fight against the advancement and implementation and legitimacy of fascism and fascist laws. This affirmative action, uh, what do you call it, cancellation, is evidence of absurdity. It's evidence of absurdity becoming reality. And that is what is threatening us. I don't know what my setting. Anyway, so, those are just some of my thoughts and positions on affirmative action. To say colorblind doesn't mean when institutions like the Supreme Court start talking about color blindness, they're not talking about not seeing us, they're talking about making us unseen, which means that is a call to genocide. That is a genocidal position. Color blindness is genocidal. So if the Supreme Court, which is the one of the most powerful branches, if not, to me, the most illegitimate, I think that both the Supreme Court and the Senate should be done away with. Hell, you can even get rid of the presidency. If I was running America, it'd just be the Congress, the legislature. I'd also do away with the military and private property. Y'all don't want me. I listen. That's a one way. That's why I should run for president. Try to take over. I'll have y'all talking about running, rising up in revolution. But anyway, so they're signaling to us that they are ready to formalize and intensify essentially the re-enslavement of Black people. And it's not even re-enslavement because we've never been out of slavery, really. But when they are getting butt naked, like what do they say, the berserker Vikings, when they would go into war, they would get butt naked before they embark on their slaughter. So when the federal government and its agencies and institutions start to put out blatantly false rationale and false justifications and false narratives in order to implement nationwide policies, even if that policy doesn't affect you directly, you know that your state is formalizing and entrenching fascism. And you should fight it. Don't fight for affirmative action. Fight against fascism. And tell all those brilliant young Black minds. Some people were talking about HBCUs and other institutions, but we can take this message to say, listen, we've had over half a century of integration. We've had over a half a century of liberalism. Let's try radicalism and Pan-African revolution, because you've had an opportunity to implement your non-solution. So let's imagine a world other than one of oppression and genocide and discrimination, and let's implement that world that we conceptualize and conceive of. Oh, wow, I just fixed it. That was weird. Anyway, I didn't really fix it. So anyway, that's my broadcast for today. Again, please like, share, subscribe, share the BroDiallo show and channel with your friends, allies, enemies, homies, cuzzos, and everybody you think that can that's willing to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of African people and our struggles. I'll be on Wednesday evening with Skip Coon for our Rational Radicals program. And then again, Friday with Earn Your Liberation, Geechee Y'all, and Dr. Jared Ball. And shout out to Jared with his release of his new edition, Mr. Telephone, new edition. He should have got Ralph Tresvant. He should have came up with the $75 to hire Bobby Brown to perform at his book release for his new edition of The Myth of Black Buying Power. I appreciate y'all, and I will see y'all Monday. And until then, be safe and continue the struggle. We will win, without a doubt. And I will be with y'all soon. And I'll make sure Wednesday we have some Q&A. We make time for Q&A for people to log in or call in or however, or type in their questions. And again, on the 24th, the weekend of the 21st to 24th, I'll be in Kansas City. If you want to meet the Rational Radicals in person, holla at us. We'll be in Kansas City. I definitely would going to the National World War One Museum. That's a very well put together display of the mass murder orgy that they call World War One, where I call it European Murder Orgy One, or Global Murder Orgy. So, if you want to come with me and check out one of my favorite museums in Kansas City, and then we'll head over to Blue Nile, get some vegan Ethiopian. So until then, y'all have a good evening and be safe, and don't do the fireworks shit. That shit is highly toxic to you and your community and the environment. So that's it. That's my final message. Peace.